Meeting of the Finance Committee to order, please. Mark, are there any public speakers?
Good morning, Board Member Schwartz and other board members of the committee. Yes, we have three speakers in person and one video. So we'll start with Jason Anthony.
Good afternoon, Lawrence Schwartz. This message is for you. Since that you like doing cost savings message, and this is for you too, Bob Ferran, why not do something that will benefit my fellow co-workers that commute every single day on the S40 and S90 buses in Staten Island? Why not give those bus routes to Matrix and or Amazon? That could save the agency billions of dollars. But yet again, according to one source that I will name, you, Larry, control everything. But since that you control everything, since that Andrew Mark Cuomo named you. But guess what, Lawrence? You have the last word to give those money to Amazon. Because Amazon is a slave to my fellow workers. It is up to you to demand them to provide a shuttle bus to my fellow workers. So I'll see you on Wednesday.
Thank you. The next speaker is Alida Dupree.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Lawrence Schwartz. Alida Dupree, for the record. My pronouns are she and her. Always good to be back with you. I'm going to talk about finance today. And I'm very appreciative of the succinct reports of Mr. Foran in being able to take highly technical issues and communicate them to me in plain language. So thank you. I'm going to talk about money today. And in the grand scheme of things, I ask myself, how do we pay for this? Because I want this system to be here. I read that the transit tax in the 12-county district is 3/8 of a cent on the dollar, 0.375. It's not very much. I don't know what it'd take to increase that. What I pay in transit tax is a lot less than the $700 a month that it would cost me and the average American to have a personal automobile. So I'm going to go get lunch later and pay some transit tax, and I'm fine with that because I want us to build this system. And inefficiency, I reiterate that it's important to consider how we manage our fare, as I've said before about moving toward Omni and not having cash on the trains and in the token booths and on the buses and having that off board, because that efficiency we gain can provide more service. I want a more frequent service, especially as a person of disabilities and dealing with inclement weather, to not have to wait so long for trains and buses. So, as I've said, this is not 1904 anymore, and tokens are a thing of the past. We can still maintain our traditions, but equity means we include the improvements of the future to help all, and I thank you.
Thank you. Our final in-person speaker is Charlton D'Souza.
Good evening, everyone. Charlton D'Souza from Passengers United. So, a lot of passengers who live in Southeast Queens are asking me about discounts for the Long Island Railroad. And we want to know what is the status of Atlantic Ticket being extended to Penn Station overnight. The trains are empty, and a lot of bus routes, a lot of buses are not running properly because of the driver shortage. And a lot of city workers, like me, have to get to work at a certain time. And if a bus doesn't show up overnight, we're left stranded. So it would be nice if, the Finance Committee, using its magical powers, could implement adding Atlantic Ticket overnight to Penn Station to help people like us. And also, if y'all could even do it, the Freedom Ticket thing, do it during the day, at least for the next 4 to 5 months to get get ridership going faster into the city until you work out the staffing shortages at New York City Transit. That would be a great help, and that would also fill up seats on the railroad. In terms of the Hollis station, we want to know with the Finance Committee, why is Hollis, Hunters Point Avenue, and what's the other station, East New York, in a state of disrepair? You guys got all this money from the federal government.
Is of foremost
So-
importance to
So we want to know if they could just rebuild those stations using the federal stimulus money, because right now those stations are dangerous. Like at Hollis, when an express train goes through it, the whole platform shakes. And I think that's the only platform in the United States that still has like a wood concrete on the platform. So anything that you guys can do to help us, and I know every month I come to these meetings, but we need something done. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll now play a virtual public comment video.
We will now hear comments for the Finance Committee. The first speaker is Andy Pollock.
Good afternoon, members of the Finance Committee. So this is just going to be a brief comment regarding the cash transactions. So I noticed that for Metro North and the Long Island Railroad, the conductors are now accepting cash payments. It's been like this for a while. But the one thing that I don't seem to understand is why aren't we allowed to make cash transactions for the Metro cards at the subway station? And the only reason why I am bringing this up is because there are a lot of disability advocates who have been wondering, when are we going to be able to start going back to the 8 station agents and start reloading our Metro cards the way we used to? And let's say a Metro card machine is out, because I witnessed that at Flushing Main Street back on Thursday. And I was saying to myself, well, we can't reload here. We have to go to another Metro card machine outside of Roosevelt Avenue. So the station agents need to start taking cash transactions again, because it's time to just go back to the way things used to be. So if the conductors are allowing payments on both Metro North and the Long Island Railroad, why can't the station agents in the subways start taking cash transactions again? So that's just going to conclude my remarks. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the public.
Next, we have the approval of the July 19th minutes. May I have a motion to approve?
Moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion, minutes approved. Mark, can you take us through the work plan, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there are no changes to the work plan. The next item on the agenda is Budget Watch, and David Keller will be making that presentation. David?
Good afternoon, everyone. Results are going to be reported now against the mid-year forecast, which was presented to the board in July. The prior budget watches were against the adopted budget. Farebox revenue was $84 million favorable year to date through August, or 4.9% favorable. August Farebox revenue is favorable by $11 million, or 4.2%. Toll revenue was $9 million unfavorable year to date, or 0.6% unfavorable. In August, toll revenue was unfavorable by $8 million or 3.8%. Farebox revenue is being measured against the mid-year forecast, which is based on the midpoint between the McKinsey worst case and best case scenarios. As a reminder, the adopted budget had assumed the McKinsey worst case scenario. While Farebox revenue is favorable compared to the mid-year forecast, actuals remain 57% or $2.4 billion below the pre-pandemic Farebox revenue level through the first 8 months of the year. Toll revenue forecast for the mid-year forecast is based on McKinsey's best case scenario, while the adopted budget was based on the midpoint for toll revenue. Toll revenue is about 6% or $81 million below the pre-pandemic level through the first 8 months of the year. Expenses were $326 million favorable year to date or 3.6%. Variance review has not been completed in time for this Finance Committee meeting. However, vacancies continue to have a favorable impact on expenses across all agencies, as does the cost of paratransit service contracts at New York City Transit. The timing of the receipt of health and welfare rebate credits has also favorably impacted results. Additional information on the nature of variances, timing versus real variances, will be provided next month. Overtime, which is included in the overall expense items, were $21 million favorable year to date or 3.3%. New York City Transit was $8 million or 2% unfavorable, primarily due to vacancy coverage needs. All other agencies combined were favorable $29 million or 12% through August. Debt service was $6 million favorable year to date or 2.3%, reflecting lower than budgeted variable rates and the timing of the PMT bond issuance. Subsidies were $169 million favorable year to date or 4.5%. This reflects receipts through September from MTA, the petroleum business tax, and the real estate transaction taxes, and through August for the payroll mobility tax, MTA aid, and for hire vehicle fee. The September receipts for these subsidies are expected at the end of this week. Through September, MTA was $21 million favorable or 1.7%. The petroleum business tax was $8 million favorable or 1.8%. MRT was favorable $44 million or 9.8%, and the urban tax was $48 million or 18.8%. Through August, the PMT was $69 million favorable, which was 6.6%, and MTA aid was $3 million favorable or 2%. For hire vehicle fee, however, was $23 million unfavorable or 15.1%. Regarding the for hire vehicle fee, we only received these on a quarterly basis. The last time we received these was in June. We're expecting the third quarter receipts at the end of this week. The mansion internet marketplace sales taxes were a combined $68 million favorable or 49% through August. The July plan recommitted these taxes to the lockbox for the 2020 to 2024 capital program. And unless there are any other questions, that is the end of Budget Watch.
David, is there any thinking about why our toll revenue is down?
It's a combination of the weather, some of the storms. This is August. We did have some foul weather at the end of the month.
Yep.
With the expectations of Hurricane Henri. Also, we're comparing this to the McKinsey forecasts, and this is a little bit in a technical nature. The McKinsey forecasts are done on a quarter by quarter basis, and we've seen that in the first month of a quarter, we usually come in unfavorable. The last month of the quarter, we come in favorable, and the midpoint, we're kind of like right in between. The month of August is the first month of that 3-month quarterly band, and I think that might have something to do with it also.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody have any questions for David? Okay, Mark, you want to keep going?
Thank you, David. Next up is Finance Watch, Patrick McCoy.
Good afternoon. We have a few transactions to report in Finance Watch. It's page 19 of your materials. The first two transactions are remarketing of variable rate bonds. We had exiting banks, in this case PNC Bank and US Bank. We're exiting those transactions, and we replaced those banks with letters of credit from Barclays Bank. We entered into 4-year agreements with Barclays for each of these bonds noted here. Next, we have on August 31st an issuance of TBTA PMT bonds, $369 million. And this transaction was used to repay, or to pay off, I should say, a transportation revenue bond anticipation note, the 2018 C2s. The all-in true interest cost for this transaction is 3.53%. It was broken up into a combination of fixed-rate bonds and a 5-year put bond with a long-dated maturity. We have a few transactions that we're working on upcoming. Most notably, later this month, we will issue $800 million of TBTA PMT senior lien bonds. This will be the 2021 C transaction. This will be used to for new money purposes for existing approved capital expenditures 2015 to 2019 and prior, as well as a component for the 20 to 24 capital program. And then we're adding in some refundings as savings would provide, as savings are available on the refundings. This transaction will be led by Goldman Sachs, and we do have a full complement of other managers here, including our MBEs, Blaylock Van, WBE Stern Brothers, and a service-disabled veteran-owned firm, Drexel Hamilton. Next, coming up next month, we will have an issuance of floating rate notes, and this is just to keep these existing bonds in the floating rate mode. That will be handled by Jeffries next month. You see here we have two fuel hedges to report. July 27th, 2.8 million gallons of ULSD at $2.05 a gallon. And then on August 31st, a similar volume at $2.03 a gallon. And that's just our normal additions to the fuel hedge program. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Does any board member have a question for Patrick? If there aren't any, we need a motion. We have a motion.
I make the motion, Larry.
Second?
Okay.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Yeah. And the vote that we just occurred covers the ratification of the TBTA sales tax resolution. This is the new resolution that was approved by the CPRB on August 9th. And then we amended our staff summary for new money so that this resolution, we can issue bonds under this new resolution. So thank you for that vote. I appreciate it.
Good, Mark?
Those were the action items. Now we'll move to Kuvesh Iyer with the procurement items for headquarters and the agencies.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. MTA headquarters has one competitive procurement action totaling $6,536,223,000. This competitive RFP is being awarded to Aetna Life Insurance Company for the administration of the health benefits program for the New York Transit Authority, Manhattan and Bronx Surface Transit Operating Authority, MTA Bus Company, and Staten Island Rapid Transit Operating Authority. This program is currently administered by Aetna and includes bargained active employees, retirees, and their dependents, totaling approximately 150,000 members from Transport Workers Union Local 100, ATU Local 1056, ATU Local 726, SSSA, and TSO Local 106. There are no non-competitive actions nor ratifications proposed this month. I submit this action for your approval.
Any questions by any board members? Commissioner Lin?
Yes, and I don't have any problem with Aetna as being awarded and are supporting going forward with Aetna. My concern is on the $6.5 billion estimate that we're coming up with, and that the actuaries have come up with, and a sense that we need to know what is the impact of COVID on those numbers, and the impact on the percentage of the workforce that's vaccinated. Recently, they've been studies that have shown that the chance of being hospitalized is 10 times as great if you're not vaccinated. I've seen studies of healthcare costs that said that it is possible that a workforce that's 60% vaccinated as opposed to 95% could have healthcare costs be as much as 10% greater than they otherwise would have been. It's recently been reported that Delta Airlines has moved towards a payroll contribution that is forgivable for anyone who's vaccinated. And it's meaningful, $200 a month for those who are not vaccinated. I'm concerned that that $6.5 billion estimate may be way off if we continue to be at vaccination levels that are 30% less than full vaccination. And I think first, it is critical that there be a sensitivity analysis to that estimate of $6.5 billion that is driven by what's the percentage ultimately of our workforce being vaccinated. And I think that if I'm right, or I fear that there are very meaningful extra costs that are possible, that is something we're going to need to come to grips with, and we're going to need to either accommodate or figure out ways of dealing with that. If, on the other hand, if getting to a very high level of vaccination very quickly reduces the costs below that 6.5 billion, because I don't know what were the assumptions about COVID in those numbers. If it reduces costs, then perhaps there's money that's available to be used in some other way, in terms of including possibilities for the workforce. But I do believe it is critical we know what will be the impact on that $6.5 billion of COVID vaccination in the workforce, and that we need to know that pretty quickly to be able to make informed judgments.
Kavesh, do you know the answers to any of Commissioner Flynn's questions?
So what we have, Commissioner, we have on call our actuary from Aon, and his name is Vince Kozlowski. He is the VP of Health and Benefits at Aon. We've used their services to go through and do the actuarial calculations. And Vince, I'm not too sure if you're on, if you could answer with regard to the queries and comments that came through.
Yes, Kamesh, can you hear me? This is Vince.
Yes, we can.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, and I understand your concerns, Bob, around COVID, and I agree it is a concern. There is a lot of uncertainty in terms of where we're going to be in the next year, the next 5 years associated with COVID. We did apply a load of 1.5% to all years to account for additional volume associated with COVID. Our current guidance for this year and next year is on a recent guidance says that we're kind of in a new norm now, and that we think that claim levels, at least short term, will be lower than they were pre-pandemic in terms of just overall claim volume. But I understand your point that given a vaccination level that's lower than normal, would there be excess claims? We have the 1.5% in it for all years. If obviously that's not as high as the 10% that you saw cited elsewhere, we can perform sensitivity analysis if that would be helpful to see what would the difference be under different scenarios.
So I would request that we do those sensitivity analysis.
Okay.
And one thing I would add, just from the financial plan perspective, OMB's been working with the procurement department on assessing the fiscal impacts of the proposed agreement. Our sense from our financial plan, we develop a conservative financial plan. We believe at this point that the estimates and the savings that were included in the staff summary in the presentation, we're confident in them. However, as you know, we go through a quarterly financial plan update process, and this is one item we're looking at as we prepare for the November plan.
I guess the question before I open it to the other board members is, from a timing perspective, when would this award, what's the timing criticality of this award versus taking some additional time to do this? I forgot already what they called it, a performance sensitivity, whatever it is. I don't know how long that would take. I don't know if that would take 24 hours. I don't know if that would take 24 days. But in terms of the expiration of the current contract versus the awarding of a new contract to Aetna, what are the timing issues around this?
Mr. Chairman, the current contract expires on the 31st of December this year, 2021. We intend to award the new contract and that become effective on the 1st of January. So there is the ability to do that sensitivity analysis, and we can instruct Aon to do so. I mean, personally, when I look at this as well, is that there's a number of factors that come into play here. These are projected, estimated numbers, and what we do is a true-up every 6 months in terms of what are the costs that have been incurred via these members and the pass-through to MTA. So I believe that we can do this analysis in parallel with awarding this contract as well.
I guess the question I have, and I want to defer to the other board members who have their own questions, or the same questions. I think one of the concerns that I'm hearing, at least from Commissioner Lynn, I don't want to speak for him, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but is that we don't get locked into something and God forbid our estimates are wrong, that somehow you're going to come back to us and ask us to increase what we awarded. So I think because it's such a large expenditure of funds, I think there's some concern among members of the Finance Committee that we've done our due diligence to try to, as best anyone can, accurately kind of project what our exposure is. So I guess what I'm asking is, I don't know how long it takes to do this, right? To dot some I's, cross some T's here. Can we postpone the vote till the October meeting? Does that cause problems? Can we get all the answers between now and Wednesday's board meeting, and we can just not take an action today and take an action on Wednesday? I'm just asking questions as to how we move this forward, but at the same time move it forward with members of this committee and the full board feels comfortable that on such a large expenditure, they're fulfilling their fiduciary responsibility.
Okay. Point noted, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to defer to Vince Kozlowski on the phone because he will be, Aon will be doing it. Vince, do you have any idea as to how quickly we can do these calculations and analysis, and what time frame is needed?
Well, I would certainly work within the board's required time frame. I would shoot. I mean, if I had to say something right now, I could say end of the week. If you needed it sooner than that, I would persevere and get it done. But I would think end of the week would be reasonable, or sooner if you need it.
Commissioner Law.
Thanks, Larry. I'm not questioning the staff's recommendations. If they're saying Aetna is the best company, I trust them. I'm not questioning employees and retirees' needs and what they've earned in terms of health benefits, but this is the largest contract that I'll be voting on in my 2 years, plus on this board. So I just have some generic questions. I don't know if they're for Mark or for maybe Bob, but I just want to try to put things in perspective. First, I know we have a gazillion different unions and bargaining chapters and this and that. Is this contract for everybody in every union and retirees, or do we have to vote on other plans for other different unions? Or what percentage of employees does this plan cover, if not 100%?
So these are, most of the other employees are covered under what we call our NISHA program. There are one or two others which are outliers, but this is by far the largest in terms of membership, and that represents approximately 150,000 members. Out of that, 66,000 are active members working for the MTA as we speak. The rest of that is made up of the dependents. And then 10,000 from there, the remaining 10,000 is for our Medicare Advantage members. So that's the split we have. This is under the collective bargaining agreements that we have. And as you mentioned, is by far the largest. We don't bring any other medical benefits programs except the prescription drugs, which is a separate procurement by itself, to the board for approval.
If you were to try to guess on the percentage, is it 80% of our employees or 90% that this would cover?
Commissioner Law, Kavesh, don't get me wrong, it's TWU,
Yes.
right? It's all the active members of TWU, the MTA bus company, it's it's retirees, dependents.
Yes.
So TWU makes up, what, 70% more of our
70%.
workforce?
Yeah.
So
They're clearly over half of our workforce, and still the retirees are over half, in that as well. So I think I heard Maggie O'Connor. Maggie, do you have an exact figure on that?
I don't have the exact figure, but let me just give a quick synopsis. This is by far the largest group of employees. They're all within the transit authority, the bus company in Sertoa. They're all within the collective bargaining agreements that Kuvesh outlined. The overwhelming rest of our folks are in the NYSHA plan, both the commuter rail collective bargaining unit, B&T's collective bargaining unit, and all non-represented people are covered under NYSHA. One thing that we have to be mindful of is this is a self-insured, not a premium-based contract. So the analysis that is done is very different than premium-based contracts.
Got it.
I hope that's helpful.
No, it was. My other generic question, and Bob, again, maybe this is more for you. What's our annual budget? 16 billion? 17.5 billion. So just this contract alone is 2.1 billion a year for the next 3 years. And then if we have these other obligations, I don't know if that brings up to 3 billion, but it's a pretty significant slice of the budget pie that we're voting on. And I just wanted to put things in perspective. Again, not questioning staff's procurement process or their recommendation. I just wanted to understand the perspective.
I could also give some reassurance that one of the attractions of staying with Aetna, not only the price and the service they've provided, is they have our history, in there. So the recommendations we're getting are about as good as we're going to get. If, for example, we're choosing another party that needed to relook at this, I'm not sure I'd feel as confident as I do today that the analysis has been, well done. The other thing in terms of risk of how much more it could cost, when you have a self-insured plan, it's what our employees use in there. If they use less, they use less. If they use more, they'll use more, and we'll do that sensitivity analysis. But what we're trying to flatten out here is that it's much more cost-effective than a plan that charges annual increases in fees, because this is about as good of a deal as we're going to get in terms of administration fees, which is those fees we really could control outside of just making sure our employees are healthier.
Hi, this is Maggie.
My lack of information. You say a self-insurance plan. So the Aetna in the four corners of this $6 billion plus, does that include our costs in terms of the expense of self-insurance?
Yes.
So yes.
That's included in that.
It's included. So this 6.5 billion, 95% of the cost is the cost of medical expenses that are incurred by the MTA employees, retirees, and their dependents.
Okay.
It's then a pass-through to the MTA as a cost, and we pay that. That's the self-insured portion. 3% of that is the administrative services fees that Aetna charges.
Understood.
We have negotiated very, very, I would say, stringently and hard with Aetna. So much so that we've managed to get a 4-month payment holiday of fees for 2022, we negotiated a flat fee rate with no increase over the 5 years, which represents another $30 million, and a further reduction in the Medicare Advantage portion of this program of close on to $104 million. So in total, from the actual cost that MTA has to pay from a services and premium perspective, we have saved the MTA $150 million over 5 years.
Hi, this is Maggie again. And I just want to make two comments. It's actually 8 months holiday fee. And then I'm the administrator of most of the benefits here at the MTA. The only downside to not going forward with this and to changing horses would be this was a very in-depth RFP, and B, changing to a new provider for 146,000 people will take at least 3 months to do so.
Yeah, Maggie, I don't think anybody's talking about necessarily changing a provider. Before I let Commissioner Lin go again, I don't know if there's an apples to apples comparison here that would be helpful to the members of the committee. Aetna is our current provider, right?
Yes.
Under a self-insured program.
Correct.
So the last time this procurement came up before the board for a vote, I assume it's was it the same length of time?
Correct. It was the same length of
Do you-
time.
Huh?
It was the same length of time.
So what was the cost of that contract? Do you know?
If I remember
Vince?
correctly, Maggie, there was around 4.8, somewhere there.
Commissioner Schwartz, we do have a side-by-side comparison that Aon produced for us that covers what we paid last time, what we anticipate to pay going forward. And it also encompasses on a very nice slide the actual cost for the two other bidders. So I would suggest to you, Commissioner Schwartz, that we do exactly what you say. Give myself and Aon and Kuvesh and Paul a couple of days to see if we can get all the information that the board has requested. Please note the sensitivity study cannot be done by 2 days, but the other information to understand where we were, where we are, and where we think we're going with actuarial, recommendations. I think you should give us the opportunity to get that together for the board.
Let me, certainly, I think all the committee members are open at least, and I'll recommend that we put off the vote because we can always vote on this on Wednesday as a full board for you and who are other parties involved to put together the material to present to the finance committee members and all the board members so they have a chance to see this. I would just ask to Commissioner Lin's earlier point about COVID. Clearly, under the existing contract, you had over a full year. And in 2020, that's when COVID was on fire, okay? That is when you're going to see the most number of transit workers, their family members, dependents getting sick from COVID, being hospitalized from COVID. So maybe you can also say, here's what we budgeted, here's what we estimated, here's what actually happened. That comparison, at least over the first year and a half, which was at the worst peak period versus going forward where you still have a high percentage of people that are now vaccinated and will get the booster shot. And we'll see whether or not we can get to a comfort level that we can actually take an action on Wednesday. We still want this sensitivity study done, irrespective of the action that the board may or may not take on Wednesday. But if you can provide the comparisons and whatever other data so that commissioners can see if they're at a comfort level and we can, and I'll speak
And our
to them
experience.
individually and get a sense going into the board meeting on Wednesday where we are.
Okay, we will do so, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Commissioner Lin?
Just one problem going back is, as I understand it, a lot of medically necessary care was not provided in the last year. And so one of the reasons numbers went down under COVID was not because COVID costs were not high, but because people were foregoing other medical care. And that's one of the things that drove case loads and costs down. But I mean, so it's a hard comparison to make.
We should get you the answer.
Yes,
If that's,
but-
if your analysis
yes.
is accurate, then let's know that.
But my main point is, again, I'm supportive of awarding this to Aetna. That's not the issue for me. And I'm not suggesting we go back and you review the award based on this information I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the need, as you point out, it was 4-point-some odd billion last time. It's now 6.5 billion. These are very important numbers driving our financial plan. And I think it is critical for us to understand the impact of COVID and vaccination rates on healthcare costs. And I don't think, and perhaps it's not a good service to this issue to try and do it in a day or 2 days or 3 days. I think that we need the time to be able to understand, to have an informed conversation about this, and to see what the implications are. But I don't think that drives, in my mind, for me, the decision Aetna or not Aetna. It drives the whole issue of our approach on the financial plan.
Commissioner Law?
Yes, thanks. I just want to dovetail on David's question and Kavesh's answer, and I want to just make sure I'm understanding this. So the $6.5 billion, Aetna is not getting $6.5 billion contract from us. They're getting a 3% of that $6.5 billion as their administrative fee, and the rest of that is just what it's going to cost us. So again, maybe cost more for Bob. So why isn't the $6+ billion just part of our budget, and we approve it as part of our budget as a cost, and why aren't we just approving a 3% of $6.5 billion contract to Aetna?
Yeah, that is effectively what we're asking you to do. Okay, we're going to constantly review the experience. Okay, so we will have a chance to look between now and the November plan to see what it is. If we need to make an adjustment up or down for that claims experience, we will, and we'll rely upon what the actuaries tell us. Then we'll have the July plan next year. So we'll adjust it then. So again, these pass-through costs are going to be whatever the pass-through costs are. That's just a fact. So in that regard, it is just an expense that we're going to pay. We hope to be able to contain it, case management, things like that, but it is just a cost. What you're really voting on is the service fee that Aetna is charging, the Medicare Advantage premium that we have there. And so those are really the two. It's that 5% of the contract that Kuvesh said.
Good, and that, and that helps then clarify it.
That has to be explained at this board meeting.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it sounds like I'm giving $6 billion plus to Aetna.
Right.
I think that explanation makes it clearer, and I think it also gives us, as the public here, going to a major company, they're going to have a fit.
Right.
But the way you explained it is perfectly adequate. I think that's more important. You
And
have
Dave,
to define that.
That's what I was driving at,
Oh,
too.
yeah.
And just like Bob, I'm not questioning the process.
No.
I'm not questioning the employees or the retirees' entitlement to this. I just want to understand that this is the biggest number contract that has ever come across my plate so far. Thanks for the clarification, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I first saw this number, 6.5 million last week, I had to wrap my head around it. So I went to look for things that I can measure against. And what I did, being a government employee, I went back to the county budget and I looked at our Medicaid costs. And we have right now 119,000 people on Medicaid in Orange County. And the annual cost for that, when you weigh in federal, state, and local aid, is about $1 billion. So here we are in Orange County, little Orange County, providing health care at a very minimal rate level to 119,000 people at a cost of $1 billion a year. It sort of put in perspective the 6.5, that it wasn't that unrealistic. So I can support it today, I can support it next week, I can support it in October. But that was how I was able to measure what we're doing in this place now. Thank you.
A spirited conversation. What I'm going to recommend, we've done this before, so it's not, we're not creating precedent here, is we'll hold off as a finance committee unless the committee members feel differently, hold off on voting this out in committee, and we'll bring it up on Wednesday at the full board. We'll allow staff the opportunity to clarify and explain what this really is, and as to your point, to the point of a number of commissioners here, that it's what the administrative fee is, answer some of these other questions over the next 24 to 36 hours, and then hopefully the full board will take this up at the Wednesday board meeting. And if the committee members here are okay with that, we'll just lay this aside for the Wednesday meeting. Okay? Great.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you for your insightful questions to the committee. Okay, so we're not voting, we're not taking a motion. I guess we have some more procurement items, Kavesh?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Metro North has one competitive procurement action totaling $5,324,852. This action is a contract modification to exercise a 2-year renewal of service options. The original contract was competitively solicited and awarded by Metro North Railroad to Arrow Rail Link Service for a fixed route scheduled feeder bus service known as the Hudson Rail Link Service to and from Metro North's Spayton, Dayville, and Riverdale stations located in the West Bronx on the Hudson Line. I submit this procurement action for your approval.
Any questions? I think you're all tired out from the other one, but Andrew, you have questions? Oh, your hand was getting a cramp. I have a motion to approve. Second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, there are no items for Long Island Railroad, New York City Transit, Bridges and Tunnels, and for no items for First Mutual Transportation Assurance Company. This concludes the procurements. Thank you.
Board members, the MTA consolidated financial statements for reports for July are in the committee book, pages 76 through 130. This month's meeting was so early in the month that we were unable to include the August financial data in the books this month, but David Keller addressed the August results in Budget Watch. Next up is David Florio with the real estate portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Chairman, real estate has 4 action items for consideration and approval. There's 1 action item for MTA Long Island Railroad, a license to the village of Amityville for a pedestrian bike path along a portion of our right-of-way within that municipality. For Metro North, we have a permit with the New York State Department of Transportation to add commuter parking to our Fleetwood station. For Bridges and Tunnels, we have a license with Anthony and Nicholas Martelli for land adjacent to their property in Broad Channel, Queens. And finally, the last action item is for the MTA itself. It's a modification of our lease with General Nutrition Corporation for its space here at 2 Broadway. There are, Mr. Chairman, additionally 4 information items, and I'm happy to answer questions regarding any of these.
Any questions?
No, but Larry, I want to abstain on the Village of Amityville license. My firm is on the verge of doing some unrelated work with the village.
Thank you, Commissioner Law. I make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. 1 abstention.
That concludes the agenda.
Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting. Do I have a second? All those in favor? Finance Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.